Let's start this morning with the latest COVID news. One of the country's largest states is now fighting back against vaccine mandates.
Overnight, Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a ban on vaccine mandates in the Lone Star State. His executive order prohibits any entity, even private businesses, from imposing vaccine requirements on employees or customers. Abbott says he's responding to the Biden administration's vaccine requirement, which he calls federal overreach. The White House's mandate requires businesses with more than 100 employees to make sure their workforces are vaccinated or tested regularly. Daily vaccinations have been ticking up in recent weeks as more companies, states, and cities issue mandates. More than 56% of the U.S. is now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. As more people get vaccinated, we're seeing the number of COVID cases go down. An average of 70,000 Americans are testing positive each day right now. Compare that with 2 weeks ago, more than 109,000 cases were reported daily. We have a team covering the latest on the pandemic, including the fight against vaccine mandates. We're going to begin with NBC News health and medical reporter ERIKA Edwards, who's covering the top coronavirus headlines this morning. So, ERIKA, let's start with this ban on vaccine mandates in Texas. What is in this order from Governor Greg Abbott, and what does it mean for businesses that are trying to comply with the Biden administration's mandate?
Hi, Joe. Good morning. Yeah, that executive order issued yesterday, just as you said, prohibits any entity, including private companies, from enforcing vaccine mandates for its employees or customers. Now, Governor Abbott, a Republican, issued a statement saying that the COVID-19 vaccine is safe, effective, and our best defense against the virus, but should remain voluntary and never forced. This, of course, was in response to the Biden administration's announcement from last month saying that larger businesses require their employees to get vaccinated or be tested for COVID-19 regularly. Now, some major businesses based in Texas, American Airlines, for example, had already previously put a vaccine mandate in place. It also gets trickier for companies that operate in different states. Facebook and Google, for example, both employ thousands of Texans. So far, their vaccine mandates are holding. Joe?
Feels like this one's going to be hashed out in the courts. Let's talk about booster shots. Nearly 8 million Americans have already received a booster dose. Now the World Health Organization is recommending immunocompromised people get a booster. It was the WHO that previously criticized countries like the U.S. for starting a booster rollout. So what's behind this new decision from them?
Yeah, this is very specific to people with compromised immune systems. They tend not to really mount a good response or any response to the first 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. They really do need that third shot, science has proven, to get protected. What the World Health Organization is strongly against is giving otherwise healthy people that booster shot, much like what the U.S. is doing, while other countries haven't had any vaccines at all. One WHO spokesperson likened it to putting 2 life jackets on one person and leaving others unprotected. Joe?
Now, ERIKA, we do continue to see some signs of normalcy. The Boston Marathon was held yesterday. New York City held its first parade since the pandemic began. Even though cases are dropping, what are you hearing from experts about the winter? Do they fear another surge similar to what happened starting last December, or are they more hopeful this time around?
So the biggest difference between now and then is the vaccines. Now more than half, 56% of the U.S. population is fully vaccinated. We could have a vaccine for kids ages 5 to 11 as early as next month. Now, that said, former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb said yesterday that, we should still continue with masking and other mitigation measures as winter approaches and we do sort of huddle together indoors. Here's what he had to say.
We're still not seeing a big resurgence of infection here in the Northeast. New England and the northern states, we are seeing cases start to tick up. I think as the weather gets cold and people move indoors into confined spaces without masks, you're going to have risk and you're going to see cases pick up. And I still think you could do things that you want to do. You just have to be more careful about how you approach them.
Now, one thing doctors are concerned about is the flu. We could see a resurgence there. Of course, it was virtually non-existent last year. The CDC does recommend everyone ages 6 months and older get a flu shot. Joe?
That's right. Keep washing those hands, too. All right, ERIKA Edwards, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Companies across the country are preparing for President Joe Biden's vaccine-or-test mandate. It will require organizations with at least 100 employees to make sure workers are either vaccinated, tested weekly for COVID, or work from home. The president says the plan will save lives and help boost the economy, but how will it be enforced? Here to walk us through that is NBC News correspondent Heidi Presbella. She joins us now from Oxon Hill, Maryland. Heidi, good morning. So, I mean, logistically, this is a massive undertaking, and it's supposed to be enforced by what's called the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which is actually understaffed to begin with. So how is the agency going to make sure businesses comply with these mandates?
Yeah, Savannah, according to internal documents that NBC obtained, OSHA inspectors, the number of inspectors is actually down by about a third since 2010. So you ask, how are they going to do everything that they do today, plus this vaccine mandate? Well, according to the longest-serving OSHA director, Dr. David Michaels, who spoke with NBC, he says, look, everybody is getting this wrong. This is not an actual mandate. It's a mandate by default. In other words, it's going to be so onerous for companies to pay for the testing, to manage the testing, do the record keeping, that it will be by default that they choose to do this. So they're assuming they do not have to set foot inside most companies. Now, when you do have a problem, then what happens? Well, they're assuming that they're going to rely largely on whistleblowers, Savannah. So in other words, here at NBC, if we have a vaccine mandate, I'm vaccinated, you're not, the company's not doing anything about it. Am I going to essentially report that?
Right.
And is that a way for the government then to prioritize industries and basically make a model out of companies that aren't doing it? It's called naming and shaming, issuing press releases and big fines.
All right. Now, the mandate's also facing pushback from leaders, especially in conservative states. We mentioned Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued an order banning these COVID vaccination mandates. How's that going to impact the mandate's enforcement, and what kind of punishments could businesses face that are not in compliance?
Yeah, Savannah, after doing a lot of reporting on this, it became pretty clear that this may really come down to regional and industry differences, that the Biden administration and OSHA itself is going to have to prioritize those industries and those regions that are most resistant to this. For instance, I spoke with the CEO of a machine company that is a huge machine company all across the Deep South and headquartered in Mississippi, Lex Taylor, the CEO of Taylor Industries. And he said, look, I have tried. OK, I already gave individuals a day off, a vacation day to go and get the vaccine. I'm still only at about 30%. And so he says, I cannot then just overnight issue this vaccine mandate and fire all of my employees. So now he feels like he's in a real hard place, because now he's going to have to go out and purchase all these tests, run the record-keeping program. Well, the administration and OSHA are going to be aware of that. They're going to know that certain industries like construction, perhaps like meat packing in certain regions, for instance, across the Deep South, are the ones where they're going to need to be prioritizing these spot inspections and trying to get information, because, frankly, some of the employees might be hesitant to do that whistleblowing in these areas where the mandate's not popular.
Lots of back and forth and tough decisions here. Heidi, thank you so much for your reporting.
Dr. ADALJA joins us now. He's a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Doctor, always good to have you with us. So first of all, what's your reaction to states like Texas banning vaccine mandates? Do you think this is going to have much of an impact on the overall vaccination rate at this point?
It's probably not going to have a major impact, but I think it really speaks to the fact that they're trying to prevent private employers, private industry from setting the terms of their employment. And I think that's the wrong way to go about this. I think that private companies, if they want to issue a mandate, should not be blocked by the government. And you also don't want companies to be in a position where if they comply with the federal law, they're in violation of the state law, and vice versa. These governors really need to back off and continue and stop continuing to pander to people that are unvaccinated and the anti-vaccine groups in their states.
And Doctor, I've got a question for you on booster shots that comes with some new numbers we have. So while the U.S. rolls out these additional doses, there's the challenge of reaching people who still don't have their first dose. But the boosters may actually be having an impact on resistance to the shot. According to these numbers, take a look at this here. You see on your screen in a new survey from the Kaiser Family Foundation, 71% of unvaccinated people say that the need for boosters indicates that the vaccines were not working. That's what they're taking away from this additional dose. What's your message to them? How do you change minds?
Many of us predicted that this was going to be one of the cascading negative impacts of the booster decision, and that's why we wanted the booster decision to be very narrowly focused on people who really had the scientific data to support the need for them, for elderly people, those with pre-existing conditions, not for the general population. Because if you tell people you've got to get another dose 6 months after the second, those people who already think the vaccine doesn't work are going to think that this is more evidence of that. But you have to really show them what we want a vaccine to do, and that's prevent against serious disease, hospitalization, and death. And by that standard, the vaccines are holding up really, really well. These boosters are about stopping mild breakthroughs in most people in the general population, in severe disease in the higher risk population. So you've got to tell them what a vaccine really does.
All right, Dr. AMESH, ADALJA, as always, thanks so much for your expertise. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Now, new developments this morning following those massive delays for thousands of customers flying Southwest Airlines this weekend. Only a handful of flights are being impacted today as Southwest flight operations return to normal. According to the company, weather and other external factors were to blame for the mass cancellations over the weekend, not employee protests over the COVID vaccine mandate. An estimated 100,000 passengers were impacted by the ongoing cancellations. The company has issued an apology to its customers, and I know one of us at this desk is happy about that news.
Hopefully, we'll see what happens later this week. All right. The legal battle over a controversial Texas abortion ban took another twist last night. The Department of Justice called the law unconstitutional, as once again urging courts to stop it from being implemented. In a filing, the DOJ said, quote, if the scheme is permissible, no constitutional right is safe from state-sanctioned sabotage of this kind. Said that the law's unconstitutionality is obvious and that Texas is unlikely to succeed on the merits. NBC News Justice correspondent Julia Ainsley is with us now. More on this. Julia, the DOJ hit back just days after an appeals court reinstated the abortion ban. Walk us through the DOJ's response and what comes next. Is it now really only a matter of time before at some point the Supreme Court gets involved?
I mean, it looks that way, Joe. Right now, we just heard yesterday from a three-judge panel in the Fifth Circuit. That is who DOJ is making this plea to, saying, please put this on hold while the appeals process plays out. Now, they could appeal and have the entire bench, what they would call an en banc hearing, where all the judges in the Fifth Circuit hear this case, and that's what they'll do next. But then if that court, which is arguably the most conservative in the nation, again won't hear the Justice Department's plea to try to put a pause on this law, then it would inevitably go to the Supreme Court again. But the filing is really interesting, Joe. I mean, what they're saying is this isn't just about abortion. This is about rights anywhere. Any issue you take a problem with, whether that be on the right or the left, if we allow private citizens to start suing others who may be tangentially connected to any issue, be it gun control, abortion, you name it, then basically you're taking the power of governing out of the hands of the governors. And that is a place where you would make a law exempt from judicial review. And simply that cannot stand. That's the argument they make here very strongly.
You know, Julia, other GOP-controlled states have had similar abortion bans blocked by the courts before. This Texas law is proving to be a lot more durable. Can you help us understand why that is?
Yeah, I'll get back more into that judicial review, how basically what happens is that the courts can get involved to say that state legislators do not have the right to intervene and take the right of abortion away from women because that's being protected at the federal level, and it's been protected for a long time under the Roe versus Wade precedent set by the Supreme Court. But this law is different because it's not being protected by state regulators. Instead, it's being protected in civil lawsuits by individual citizens. It would allow an individual citizen to sue anybody connected with a woman's abortion, whether or not that individual citizen knew that woman or not. And so it's a way for them to try to get around this. So in the past, when some of these lawsuits have challenged this law, they've had to go after and sue people like the clerk of the court, because it's really unclear who's enforcing this, because it's really the courts enforcing it at this moment rather than the state. They can't sue the state of Texas. That is how these laws have been blocked in the past, and that's why this one gets around it in such a surreptitious way.
You know, Julia, abortion rights advocates have been speaking about the impact this ban is having on Texas women looking to get an abortion. Quickly on this last point, but what are they saying? How has it been affecting them?
Well, that it's a near total abortion ban. That's what they say. That even when we saw that brief lift last week, Joe, when the district court judge said that this law was flagrantly unconstitutional and that it should not stand before this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals got involved. Even then, they were able to do very few because they were worried that they could then be sued at a later date, because this law also builds that in, that if it's lifted temporarily, put back in place, you could be sued. So still a lot of fear for a lot of women trying to get these procedures in Texas.
Julia Ainsley, thanks so much for your reporting.
Now, there's new fallout this morning surrounding the January 6th insurrection and how Capitol Police responded that day.
An anonymous whistleblower is blasting law enforcement leadership, accusing top officials of sitting on potentially vital intelligence in the days leading up to the insurrection. NBC News senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson has the story.
New fallout from an explosive letter written by an anonymous former Capitol Police officer describing top department officials as responsible for the single greatest intelligence failure in the history of the U.S. Capitol Police, calling out senior leaders Yogananda Pittman and Sean Gallagher specifically. Quote, "What I observed was them mostly sitting there, blankly looking at the TV screens showing real-time footage of others." A law enforcement source tells NBC News the two leaders were focused on the evacuation of congressional leadership. Pittman with Lester back in April.
Every day I think about the well-being of the officers.
Capitol Police say although there's more work to do, many of the problems described in the letter have been addressed and that they're committed to learning from prior mistakes.
It's all the more reason that we need to continue to see an aggressive January 6th bipartisan commission pursue the ground truth of what happened that day.
It comes as the former president, rallying in Iowa this weekend, hints at another run.
We're using the same slogan, "Make America Great Again,"
and clings to the lie that triggered that insurrection, that the election was stolen, even though it was not.
I never conceded, never.
But state after state where the election was close conducted audits to check the vote totals. Georgia even counted 3 times, with all of it confirming again that Joe Biden won. Still demonstrating Mr. Trump's hold on his party, this new dodge from a top GOP leader.
So you think the election was stolen?
What I said is there are states that didn't follow their legislatively set rules.
Do you think the election was stolen?
Yeah. And it's not just irregular. It's states that did not follow the laws set, which the Constitution says they're supposed to follow.
GOP Congresswoman Liz Cheney, in response to that moment, tweeted, "Republicans have a duty to tell the American people that claims of a stolen election are just not true." Savannah, Joe, back to you.
All right, Hallie, thanks for that report.
Yeah. Now, the man who brought so many of us to the stars will finally get his moment in space tomorrow. Legendary actor William Shatner's Blue Origin rocket flight was delayed one day because of weather conditions. Now, the National Weather Service predicts winds in West Texas to reach as high as 75 miles per hour today. Now, barring any further setbacks, the 90-year-old is slated to be the oldest person in space ever. Here he is speaking to the Today Show about his upcoming adventure.
I've got to think that once it's done, once I've been into space and seen the universe and seeing our Earth and the contrast between that hostility and this warmth and how important it is to keep the Earth alive so that we don't wreck it, we human beings don't wreck it. That contrast in all of that is so dramatic to me.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and his rocket company are now selling tickets to see Earth from space. Shatner is scheduled to fly with Blue Origin's Vice President of Mission and Flight Operations and 2 people who spent $250,000 for their seats on New Shepard. Joining us now is former NASA astronaut Scott Altman. He's also a recent winner of the Illinois Order of Lincoln for his work uplifting his community. Scott, congratulations on that, and thank you for being here with us. It's always a fun day when we get to intro someone who's actually been to space, so thanks for your help on this one. Let's start with the delay of this launch. So usually we actually see rockets blast off over from Florida, from Cape Canaveral, where rain can come and go as quickly as I'm asking this question. But how can wind in West Texas impact a launch?
Yeah, winds actually impacted my shuttle launches as well. The upper level winds change the trajectory, and you have to worry about what's going on there. So they made the call early that the forecast winds were going to be too high for the vehicle to follow its planned parameters and push to tomorrow.
Now, Scott, what's your advice to William Shatner, who's waited decades for his moment in zero gravity, but now has this extra 24 hours thinking about it? What do you think's going through his mind as he deals with this delay?
Well, I had 2 of my flights slip a day, so I know exactly what it's like to be all ready to go and then have to wait a day. But still, when you get out to the pad and you're there, it's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what he says after going up there. And my advice would be get to the window as soon as you can in zero G and just enjoy looking back at the Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, I mean, you've been up there on 4 space flights. Not to put you on the spot here, but would you ride on this rocket? Would you get on New Shepard and head up there?
Well, interestingly enough, 2 of my crewmates from my last mission are actually working for Blue Origin.
Oh, wow.
So I think it's a great ride. I'm excited that we're opening access to space so much, getting people like William Shatner. You know, I was not quite 10 years old when 2 things happened. Star Trek came to an end and we walked on the moon, 2 things that inspired my whole career. So it's great to see them coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what do you think about this, about Captain Kirk heading up?
Very cool. I'm excited for him. I think he's going to have a great time. Floating is awesome. It takes a little bit of getting used to. So with only 3 minutes, we'll see. But it's going to be a great 11 minutes ride.
All right. Scott Altman, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this morning.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Time to get a check of the weather back here on Earth.
With Bill Cairns, of course. Hey, Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. I have to say that you and I do not look a year older. I mean, we look great.
Wait.
Oh, Bill.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Sorry. I was just trying to give a compliment to someone.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, so, yes, no problem. So let's get into this forecast. We had a lot of severe weather over the weekend, especially in the Midwest. We had severe weather rolling through Illinois last night. That storm is leaving, and now the storm behind it, we have snow we're going to deal with, and we have another severe weather event later on tonight. So this is like our first snow forecast of the fall season. This is very typical. It happens in October. It's known that the Rockies get snow this time of year. The higher elevations will get nailed with this one, especially in Wyoming and areas of Montana. So the skiers are starting to wax up their skis. The snowboarders are excited because we're getting close to some of the first openings. You know, there's always a race in Colorado to see who can open first. So Colorado doesn't get a ton of snow out of this one, but they have another chance Thursday, Friday. And as far as severe weather goes, later on tonight, this will be an overnight event, Oklahoma and also Kansas, portions of Nebraska. We're going to get large hail, maybe some isolated tornadoes. So tomorrow morning, we'll update you on that and just show you if anything bad happened. Hopefully it won't. And as far as rainfall goes, areas from Del Rio to San Antonio up to Dallas is where we'll be dealing with areas of heavy rain, too, from this storm. So the other story, I mean, you guys have seen it. I mean, it's still incredibly warm. 70s all the way up through New England today. Tomorrow's the same thing, 80 in D.C. I mean, this week is going to be ridiculous. By Friday, guys, New York City is expecting 80 degrees in the middle of October.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.